So today I will be looking at and going over my meet from March and kind of what went wrong and what I was expecting. So I knew going into this meet, if everything was perfect, it would be possible to hit a 2,000 pound total. Now, for that to happen, I would have to hit a 360 kilo squat, a 230 kilo bench, and a 317.5 kilo deadlift. I've hit the squat and the bench before in training, and the deadlift, I got into my knees but hadn't locked out, but theoretically it was there. Now, the chances of all three of these things coming together in a single day was single digits, probably 1 or 2%. I mean, I had to be on my game on every single thing, but if it's going to happen, you would think it would be when you're peaked for a meet. That said, wasn't feeling super confident about it in the training leading up to the meet. All the stuff you saw in the last video wasn't really indicating I was going to give a standout performance. However, on the day of the meet, as I was warming up for my squats, I was doing really well. So they had a bunch of warm up stations. I was very fortunate in this meet. Honestly, there was only one other person working in with me. They only did a couple warm ups, and then I had the rack to myself for almost an hour to warm up, which is great. I never get a warm up that good in meets. So I work my way up to a 675 single, and it feels incredibly light, very easy, and I feel like I'm burying it. I came into the meet thinking, I might struggle with this, but when I actually get to that warm up, I'm feeling very confident about my performance. When I actually get to the platform to do my opener, which was 330 kilos, the plan was to go 330, 345, 360 if everything goes perfectly. However, as you can see with this first attempt, when I was giving them my rack heights, I think I felt a little too confident in a rack height that was one place higher than it should have been. And as I unrack the bar, I really have trouble keeping my balance. In this first squat, you can see my feet are dancing around. I even go forward at one point, step forward, and at that point, all the weight was shifting to my calves, and I really just could not get myself balanced, especially in this first attempt, but actually in all three. So once I start actually moving the bar, I'm already feeling pretty tired, and I end up failing this lift on depth, which, big surprise. That's a problem in my regular training when I, have all factors under my control. Not too surprising. So I move into the second attempt with a mentality I really need to bury this lift. And as you can see in the video, I think I successfully do that. However, for whatever reason, the 330 that had been such a easy weight to move becomes impossible, and I actually fail the lift. I can't tell you the last time I failed a squat on strength. It's been years. So to do it here really, really took me out of it, and I did not know if I would have the mental to recover from that and do my third. But, I didn't really have an option. I had 2 failed squat attempts, and if I didn't get this one, I was out of the meet. And luckily, despite the rack height and despite needing to go deeper, I somehow managed to pull this one off, and as you can tell, it is not really deep either. I think I just barely got this one just scraped by a fragment of an inch, and I was still in the meet. Now, moving on to the bench, bench really wasn't feeling amazing, but I still felt pretty strong. In warm-ups, I felt like maybe the 230 kilo I was hoping for wasn't there, but I might be able to get something close. And as I do 210, it quickly becomes clear that I do not have the strength that I expected to on that day. And as I attempt my second 220, it does not go very well. I also am unable to do the exact same weight on my third attempt, so I only end up with my opener. This one's harder to attribute to, obviously, or maybe not obviously, but for me, when I bench in a meet after I've squat, I have a lot of trouble keeping my back stable. I start to cramp up in my back. I don't know if that's super common, but for me, it's happened in every meet. I'm always really pushing myself to the limit on my bench. The only factor that can explain how I did this poorly, I think, is the fact that I chose to use my squat shoes to bench in as opposed to my deadlift slippers. In the moment, I thought, this is how I always do in a meet. I always use my squat shoes to bench, but when I went back and looked at older footage, I was using my deadlift slippers in at least my last two meets. Now, is the shoe selection what made me go from a 230 kilo to only being able to do 210 for the day? I don't think so. I don't think anything would have made the 230 kilo there that day. But it might have been enough for me to at least squeak out a 220. So that was a poor choice on my part. That probably only made about 10 kilo difference. Now, on the deadlift, I was not feeling super great. So far, I was 2 for 6 in the meet, only getting my opener squat and bench. So I was a little worried for the deadlift. My deadlift is by far my least consistent lift. I can never really tell if I'm going to have 250 kilo single for the day or a 285 in training. So it's very hard for me to judge where I should be opening up. For my 2,000 pound total aspirations, it made sense to open up at 285, shoot for 300 for a second, and then go 317.5 for a final. But with how poorly the meet had been going so far, plus being my most inconsistent lift, I decided to drop down to 270 for my opener. However, deadlift always seems to be there on meet day for me. Something about squatting and benching before just really gets me where I need to be warming up on deadlifts, and I can always just deliver my best performance. So the 270 here is way too easy for an opener, but better safe than sorry, especially on this meet. And in 285, I end up pulling it like an opener. This is what my opener should have been, so it makes sense that it's as easy as it is. Now, at this point, I already know I'm going to be in first place for my weight class, and I'm not really too concerned with where I settle on dots. So my only real goal was to finally get that 700 pound or 317.5 kilo deadlift PR that has escaped me in training. So, I know I'm not anywhere near my max. If I'm not going to get, I don't really care that much about getting the 1900 either. It just makes sense to, shoot for the stars and get that 700. So I make a huge jump from 285 to 317.5 kilo. And I didn't really expect to get it. I just wanted to take a shot at it. And surprisingly, it pops off the ground very, very easily. And I seem to be so surprised that it did that I just kind of throw it on the ground. I don't know if I could have actually pulled it, but for whatever reason, my brain just kind of malfunctions here and the bar goes straight down. So I ended up with a, I don't know, I think 1,819 pound total. So far off of what I was hoping for, over 180 pounds drop for my ultimate goal. I went 4 for 9. It's my ugliest performance by far, but I can confidently say that it has inspired my training since then, and I am definitely doing a lot better now. So in summary, I think the big things to take away from this is, one, that rack height was destroying my squat. Had it set to 17, it should have been 16, maybe even 15. I really need to play around with that. But I think that just slaughtered my squat. And as a result of that, my confidence for the rest of the meet. My bench, I don't think it was there that day. The squat may or may not have been, but the bench definitely wasn't. And the shoes made probably some impact on that. And as for the deadlift, that was the closest performance of the day, since I actually got my target weight on the bar and moving, but I wasn't able to squeak that out. Whether that was from the ability to do it or not thinking through what I was actually doing, I'm not sure of, but that's all there is to say. I look forward to showing you some better performances in the future.